And welcome back to another episode of the Internet Paladins radio show. I am your host, Jamal.
And I am the Spaniard.
Indeed. And for a little bit of a change, we're coming at you this week, or this episode rather, not from Granada. We decided to take a trip to Marrakech. And what do you think of it?
I think it's absolutely delightful. And I think the weather is really nice. And the fruits. How do you... The fruits. That's all I can really say. The fruits.
Well, if you eat too many, you'll be talking about the toots that you'll be getting from them as well. So be careful. But
it's fruit. Fruit's good. I like fruit. Fruit. Okay, that's enough about fruit.
Yeah. We were thinking about continuing this discussion that we were having about destroying the world, and then we had an invitation to head down to Morocco from one of my friends, so we decided to hold off on recording.
Sure.
But now we're back. We've had an extra day to think about this. So, what did you think about it?
Well, sorry, I completely missed the question. I was.
You're eating that pile of dates, aren't you? It's horrific what they do to your poop if you eat too many. Just put that out there.
I actually saw a box at the grocery store today. I saw a box of Iranian dates, and I thought that was interesting because I thought there was some crazy embargo and Iran couldn't trade. Or
I guess they can trade with us, but the Americans probably don't have their goods, which is too bad because Iranian dates are almost as good as Moroccan dates, but not quite. Anyway. Our original question, enough about dates, we'll talk about them in the future many times, I'm sure. But going back to the question of global warming and whether or not humans can destroy the Earth, aside from putting every single American in the same place at once, thus cracking the planet in half with their weight, what was your idea about destroying the Earth? World?
This brought the situation in Fukushima to mind, and I was wondering if radiation, like obviously the planetary body itself can't, there's nothing we can really do to destroy it, right? Our science isn't advanced enough to be able to crack the planet in half or something like that. But radiation can kill all life, can't it? So could we turn the Earth into the moon or something? Would that not essentially be destroying the world?
I guess. I don't know if we would be able to kill all life. I mean, some species they suggest have survived cataclysms already, like roaches and ants and algae and single cell organisms. So as long as some kind of life manages to, I'm sure there'd probably be some life forms out there that would actually positively react to the radiation, like mutate and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe what that would actually involve is 2 million years or 200 million years of nothing, followed by a rise of creatures out of Dungeons and Dragons or something, mutated beasts being. Then again, I mean, that could have happened before, and then everything alive now could be the mutated beasts to the people who came before us, but who knows? So, I don't know. As long as some life survived, I mean, nuclear fallout and stuff has a half-life, so I mean, eventually it would go away, but...
So that's actually an interesting situation, because did you just, in effect, describe what happens to humanity? So, for example, no one can really explain the pyramids. They say they're burial chambers, but they date far beyond that time. There's no hieroglyphics inside. And really, the whole burial chamber thing is just an assumption. And also the Sphinx. And also, there's places in Pakistan where the radioactivity actually radiates from the rocks and stuff like that, and the ruins that they found, and it's the background radiation is much, much higher than normal, suggesting, was it a nuclear war? Did they have that kind of technology? Did they have reactors? What happened? So did you just describe the cycle of human history? Do we eventually always reach the point of atomic energy screw it up, wipe most of ourselves out, and then, start over again.
That certainly would be interesting. That would be one hell of a test that was put for us by the big man. Here's this. Maybe atomic energy is supposed to be the gateway to some kind of goal we're supposed to achieve, and yet we always screw it up, and the cycle just continues. I don't know. But yeah, there was, what was that, that ancient city or something in the Indus Valley? Irradiated from an atomic blast.
Yeah.
Was that our atomic blast, or was that one that happened a long time ago?
Basically they dug up, like they were doing an archaeological excavation of the area. They dug up a really, really old city, and there were skeletons, and there was remains of living spaces and stuff like that. And they found, number one, the remains were radioactive. Number two, there was glass everywhere, like from heat and fusion and stuff like that.
So I just found an article about it. It says the ruins of the ancient cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa are extremely radioactive. Practically nothing is known of their histories, except both were destroyed suddenly. In Mohenjo-Daro, in an epicenter 150 feet, again, what is that in real measurements? I don't know, a lot of meters wide. Everything was crystallized, fused or melted. 180 feet from the center, the bricks are melted on one side, indicating a blast. Excavations down to the street level revealed 44 scattered skeletons, as if doom had come so suddenly they could not get to their houses. All the skeletons were flattened to the ground. A father, mother, and child were found flattened in the street, face down and still holding hands. It's been claimed that the skeletons, after thousands of years, are still amongst the most radioactive ever found, on par with those of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But here's something else to shock you. In the forest areas between the Indian mountains of Raj Mahal and the Ganges, an explorer came upon unknown charred ruins. A number of huge masses appeared fused together and hollowed at various points, like lumps of tin struck by a stream of molten steel. The result could not be due to ordinary fire, however violent. And somebody else stumbled upon similar ruins with a half-vitrified courtyard. I don't know that word. Must be pretty bad. Ruined buildings with walls like thick slabs of crystal. Yeah.
Define. Oh. Okay, to vitrify, to convert something into glass.
Ah. Well, so now someone's asking, did nuclear war wipe out large sections of the civilized world in the 3rd millennium BC?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
But where's the craters? Like, where's the...
I don't know, do nuclear bombs cause craters?
You know what? If they're... with an airburst, no, they don't. So if they were like launched by missiles and stuff like that, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of Redditors listening right now, like laughing about how dumb we are for talking about it. But then again, they've probably never actually read anything about this before, so check it out. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that history just begins. No one ever really stops to think about this. History literally just. There's nothing. Egypt. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important question to ask. What happened before the Egyptians? Egypt was old when the Egyptians were there. Like, the ancient Egyptians considered the pyramids old. So if they considered, these things old, obviously there's something, something happened beforehand.
Yeah.
And history was lost somehow. And people say, well, why is it recorded anywhere? Well, look at us today. Everything we have is digital. What's going to remain if this gets destroyed? Nothing. There's going to be almost no record, except a couple of libraries full of books. But eventually, like 1,000 years from now or something, they probably won't even exist.
Yeah. Well, if you believe, like, Wikipedia talks about the Natufian culture, an Epipaleolithic culture that existed from 13,000 to 9800 BC in the Levant and the Mediterranean. It was a sedentary. It was like the first agricultural society.
But see, there's a problem with this because I hear a lot of scientists, quote unquote, talk about how, there was nomadic tribes and stuff like that. So basically, then they're saying that they went from camels, 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 giant pyramids. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean, the pyramids, I mean, now if we wanted to, we could construct them, if we wanted to spend the money, but the engineering and mathematical expertise required to make those, like, without cranes and industrial machinery would have been astounding. So, but then when you really think about it, I mean, 500 years ago, white people were still covered with their own shit and, farming potatoes in cold, damp fields, and now have all this technology. So, I mean, if the society rose, 15,000 years ago, who's to say that between 13,000 and 9,800 BC, they didn't develop their own advanced society, right? I mean, it was enough time.
Yeah.
That's 4,000 years almost. I mean, that they could have.
Yeah.
So I think people make the mistake of assuming that ancient cultures were all stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
And only now are we able to imagine science and even though most of our modern beliefs are based on things that were thought of 3,000 years ago in Greece and in the Middle East and stuff, and which itself might be ideas based on 3,000 years earlier ideas from Egypt, which could be based on 3,000 years earlier ideas from this Natufian culture, for all we know. So, but then again, I mean, there's experts out there who probably have more details than we have who would laugh at us, but they aren't here, and we are. So that's what we think.
Yeah, I just always have this feeling that a huge chunk of our history is gone. Like, we don't know what happened.
Well, doesn't the Quran talk about how God erased certain societies from the earth as punishment for their misdeeds?
Yeah, and on top of that, he actually declares that a proof. He says, if you don't believe I exist, if you don't believe it's going to happen, just walk through the earth and take a look at all the ruined civilizations that that don't exist anymore. And we can do that, right? We can see the pyramids. We can see the ruins of lots of civilizations. They're just nothing. People just vanished.
I'm sure it's easy enough to think that weather or human events could have caused that, but I mean, weather and human events put in motion by God. So, yeah. I think people often make the mistake of assuming that God must always act directly whenever he does something, but I don't think there's any rule indicating that, right? Yeah. So he can act in any way he pleases. So if culture extincts itself, it could be through his influence rather than their own actions. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to travel back, and people always talk about, like, when would you go back in time to? And here's my question for you. It's not a super difficult one, but if you could go back in time to any period in history and never come back, the machine explodes behind you.
Really?
When would you go back? And a lot of people would be like, I want to go back to the medieval times, or I want to go back to see Jesus, or I want to go to Rome or to the dinosaurs or something. When would you're a more intelligent man than they are, so when would you go back in time to?
I would go back.
If we have time for you to answer that
we have
section.
Yeah, we have about 60 seconds. You know what? I'm going to save my answer to the next segment, because I think you're going to find it really interesting and it's going to foster a lot of conversation.
All right. We'd like to know what time you guys would all go back to. So once we have comments up, leave comments and we might actually read them. Maybe.
Yeah. It's a really good question. It's a really good question. In fact, it may probably be the best question asked so far. This is an impossible question, by the way. And in case you guys don't know what that is, it's basically a really difficult question that we try to ask the other person that sort of stretches the imagination and forces them to think in ways that they normally probably wouldn't. And it's just a good mental exercise for us.
Indeed. And for you.
And for you. And we're going to get to the answer to the last question asked in just a moment. We'll be right back.